All right, the news just dropped. It dropped like a lead balloon, but Erik ten Hag is coming back at Manchester United. That's the headline. Apparently, according to Fabrizio Romano, there are contract talks that are going to follow this return to the job. What I find hilarious is that we are getting this information on June 11th, which means Erik ten Hag had to wait like 2 weeks for Ineos to come up with a decision, which, in my opinion, is indicative of one thing. They were going to fire him before the FA Cup final, but then he won the FA Cup final while talking so much shit and backing it up that they ended up bringing him back anyways. And I believe, and I'm going to be honest here, I just started managing Manchester United on Football Manager. I'm pulling that direction. I'm trying to do Ten Hag's job here. I believe that this is indicative of discord. I believe that this delay in the decision-making process is a sign that Manchester United is not healthy, which is not good, right? Because the reports before the FA Cup final were that no matter whether he wins the FA Cup final or not, they're going to fire him. Well, then, if that is the case, then even if he wins the FA Cup final, you're going to fire him. You realize that is a part of it. What they were actually saying was, we don't think he's going to win the FA Cup final, so we're going to fire him after it. But now he does win it, and it's not like Manchester United. They played well. Right, I'm not saying they were undeserving in winning the FA Cup final, but it's not like Manchester United looked like they turned over a new leaf. Like all of a sudden they outplayed Manchester City in every phase of the game. They gutted it out. They had a great plan and they executed it, but it wasn't like you left that game thinking Manchester United was the better, more talented team, the better coach team or whatever. I mean, maybe the better coach team you could have an argument for on that particular day, and I guess that's kind of the point. But the main point that I'm returning to is that if you have a decision made, right? If you have your decision completed and you're like, we are going to move on from Erik ten Hag, and then he wins, right? And then this cascade of support and people trying to throw numbers around in a particularly weak managerial market with even guys like Kieran McKenna returning to Ipswich. Like there just doesn't seem to be a lot of available good managers out there for you to try and make your team better than continuing the Ten Hag era for one more season to see if things turn around. Well, then it's pretty obvious what happened. Right, like the reason that I think this shows that there is confusion in the ranks at Manchester United is because they didn't consider this possibility. Right, they were definitely going to fire him if he lost that game. There's not a doubt in my mind. The leaks were from reputable sources. They were talking to people at the club. So the only explanation is that after that match, the people at the club changed their mind, but they didn't do it instantly. They did not do it instantly. The only reason this pause would exist is if it took you a while to consider whether you wanted to actually pull the trigger or not. And they decided not to pull the trigger. I would imagine that there were some discussions going on behind the scenes at Manchester United, maybe with a player or a person like Kieran McKenna, maybe with an Emery at Sporting, right? Trying to decide what gauge interest, see if they would want to come to Manchester United, right? Just playing the field a little bit in that 2-week period. I mean, what's the other reason that this would be happening? Right, and it's a bad sign, I think, if you're a Manchester United fan, and I know you're probably getting tired of those if you are, that it took so long for this decision-making process to go into effect. Right, if he wins that match, and for some reason you've decided to completely change your opinion on this guy based off of this one match, right, a lot of people will say that's not fair. The difference between winning and losing a final is a very big deal, right? And the perception of everybody involved is going to be changed about whether you win or lose a final, which is why it is stupid in the first place that it was clearly such an organizationally wide-known decision that they were going to fire him that it was leaking out to everybody and their mother, right? I think that was a bad play in the first place, and then it was obvious that was actually true because of how long that it took them to kind of come back to Erik ten Hag in the first place. So it's just bad signs all over the place, bad juju, and bad business also, because you've got basically a club in limbo until the decision was made that Erik ten Hag should be coming back. But they have flipped it. They've flipped it entirely, right? They've not just said he's coming back. They've said, no, we're going to talk about a new contract. You don't want a lame duck manager on the final year of their contract, so you got the opportunity to go extend it as well. So a lot of heavy decisions have been made. Now, it is possible, although I find it unlikely given the amount of leaks that were coming out before the FA Cup final, that they told Ten Hag basically right afterward that he would be back. It just took a little while to get public-facing stuff in order. I can't imagine why that would be the case, but I just want to leave that possibility open. But he's back. Do I think it's a good decision? I don't think it's a bad one. I know I made a video about Ten Hag and how I think it makes more sense to fire him than not. Right, we went over how Manchester United has had kind of historically bad performances It has not been in this situation for a long time, and how Ten Hag still kind of gets away with the excuse that these aren't his players when the most of the teams he puts out, it's the vast majority of the players on the field are players that he has brought into the club. So I do think that he gets a let off when it comes to a lot of that. But Erik Ten Hag is clearly not a bad coach. I get in trouble a lot of times for saying stuff like that about Gareth Southgate as well, but bad coaches are the ones that get fired from these jobs very, very quickly, right? They're the ones that go to Ajax and don't dominate the league, which clearly, given the way things have gone in Netherlands recently, was not as easy as Erik Ten Hag was making it look while he was at Ajax with Antony and company. So he's somebody that can, when the circumstances favor him, figure it out. Now, Erik Ten Hag's also put his foot in his mouth a lot. There's going to be the whole Jadon Sancho situation. He's obviously not going to come back, but how much money are they going to be able to get for him when everybody knows that Manchester United's desperate to get rid of them? And with Erik Ten Hag coming back, there are a couple of other situations that you're walking into. The resurgence of Harry Maguire, the rise of Kobe Mainu and Alejandro Garnacho. And there just seems to be a large number of deadweight players at Manchester United from just all over the place. Martial's run is finally over, right? Unless we get a surprise contract extension. His contract's coming up in this summer. Amazing, surprising, stunning. I can't believe he never triggered that Ballon d'Or clause. But no, I don't actually think this is a bad decision. I think there's one very obvious reason for that, and it's one that is always worth discussing. Is, player has a certain value, or a coach has a certain value, but that value changes in relation to the market. Let's say you want a striker, right? But there's 5 great strikers in the transfer market. Well, the price of those strikers goes down because they're going to, the one club that needs a striker has 5 strikers to choose from. Well, we're in the inverse of that in the manager market. There are not a lot of managers with the credentials and the pedigree that they will be accepted as the manager of a large club like Manchester United, right? There just aren't a lot of them out there. And the ones that do exist out there seem to all be re-upping with the club that they're at. Either they want to avoid the chaos of new management or the chaos of Manchester United in general, or they're being talked to by other clubs that maybe there's going to be an opportunity down the line, like a Xabi Alonso at Leverkusen, who I think is off to Real Madrid in a year or two whenever Carlo Ancelotti is gone. Don't put that by Florentino Perez, by the way. I'm almost certain that he's got that one covered. But typically when you go into a manager market, there are a couple of obvious choices. It just felt like after the Xabi Alonso piece did not fall, and apparently Thomas Tuchel was not interested, right, that there weren't a lot of great options that Manchester United would be able to convince itself, its fans, its players was a significant upgrade, would be able to convince them that it's a lot of that optimism is the path. And I think continuity can also help a club like Manchester United, which has been in turmoil since Sir Alex Ferguson, for better or worse, has been just not been able to get stuck into one plan. Now, Ineos taking over obviously wanted to try and start a new era, but when they started to ask people like Thomas Tuchel to start that new era, I think everybody else just said no. And I think it's one of those things, if you're asking your date out to the prom and the first 5 options say no, well then you take the best option that you have left available. And I'm going to be honest, if Amorim said no, right, because what Amorim's done at Sporting has been really impressive in Portugal, and I probably would have taken him over Ten Hag as the coach of United. But if Amorim said no, and all the other people that are kind of documented publicly as saying no, or have already signed on with other clubs, or already re-signed with their clubs like McKenna, who I'm sure Manchester United talked to, at the guy at Ipswich, then I think Ten Hag was the best choice left available. I think Ten Hag also gets, plus 10 points to Gryffindor for being the coach that's already there and having that kind of continuity and understanding with the squad, understanding of how he wants to play, understanding of the players on his team that might be able to help him be better, right? You bring in a new manager. Manchester United doesn't have a ton of freedom under FFP, it seems, at the moment. So you bring in that new manager, they're probably going to be stuck with a lot of the old tools that Ten Hag brought in the first place. You might as well keep the guy that feels like he knows how to operate those tools in place at least one more year. But Ten Hag's seat will be scalding. If Manchester United has another season outside the Champions League, convincingly outside the Champions League, it's going to be loud. It's going to be loud, and it's going to be consistent, and even Mark Goldbridge isn't going to be able to hold the fort. The trick to this is that Ten Hag feels great the entire offseason, right? And Manchester United feels great having Ten Hag for the entire offseason because he won the FA Cup. But we forget the vast majority of this season, if he got fired at any time, nobody would have been surprised. And so this is somebody that even if they go in and offer a new contract, we've seen the amount of compensation that a lot of these clubs are willing to pay out in order to move somebody. Just ask Chelsea how much Potter cost. But if Manchester United doesn't go in the right direction early on this season, maybe it's got a tough schedule early in the year, plays a lot of the big six and ends up in the bottom half of the table after 10 games or something, that seat is going to be scorching. It is going to be white hot. It is going to singe whatever hair is left off the top of Erik ten Hag's head. And it's going to be a really tough situation. I think he's going to have the opportunity to spend. I think they're going to give him one more opportunity to spend whatever money they've got left within FFP to try and add to this team. I wouldn't be surprised if Manchester United made one more splash acquisition. And that, of course, each time that Ten Hag does that is going to increase the heat of the seat when he fails, right? Like the more money that you spend, the more the pressure gets put on you because people are aware of how much money he spent already. Everybody always holds Antony over his head, but he's not the only one. There are times this season where even somebody like Casemiro, he's looked absolutely cooked, right? Like completely outdated in that defensive midfield spot. And so Ten Hag needs to find the answers. And, you know, he was talking a lot about how this is what he does and he wins trophies. Well, he's going to have to keep delivering because everybody points at Sir Alex Ferguson first couple of years not flying high, right? But eventually Sir Alex Ferguson started to fly high, and it was right about now, right? So Ten Hag is going to have to start delivering right now, or he can't even, you know, pretend that he's on the Sir Alex Ferguson trajectory. But the news just broke. I was sitting down to record something else, so those are my initial thoughts on the whole topic. I don't think it's the worst move in the world. I think it's a really bad sign how long it took to come to that decision. I expected with the outflowing of fan support for, you know, them to immediately just say that he was coming back. I honestly figured that that might have already happened and I just missed it. But no, the big public announcement just dropped. And according to Fabrizio, new contract on the way. So the Ten Hag era, it is continuing. He is a glutton for pain and punishment, I guess. See ya.